Today, we will analyze Apple's 2023 second quarter earnings report. Apple CEO Tim Cook's opening speech can be divided into three parts: hardware, software, and services. As you will see in detail, hardware performance was a bit disappointing, but there were good news in other areas. First, on hardware, iPhone revenue reached $39.7 billion during the quarter, representing a 2% decline from the exceptional performance in the same period a year ago. Despite overall setback, revenue records were set in various markets including India, Latin America, the Middle East, Africa, and several other countries. iPhone's active install base reached a new all-time high with a record in switchers from Android camp. Mac sales were $6.8 billion, down 7% year-over-year. The entire Mac lineup now operates exclusively on Apple Silicon, and this drove strong upgrades and new customer purchases. But still, it couldn't peak last year's pent-up pandemic demand. iPad revenue amounted to $5.8 billion, a 20% decline. This is in part due to a challenging comparison and also due to the timing of the iPad Air launch in the previous year. Management added that iPad continues to appeal to students for academic purposes. Wearables and accessories revenue reached $8.3 billion, marking a 2% increase in line with expectations. Apple Watch continued to expand its reach, with about two-thirds of customers being new to the product, and Mr. Cook stressed the importance of health-related features on Apple Watches. Regarding the Vision Pro, he mentioned that the device is on track to launch next year, as previously announced. Next is about the new innovations in Apple's software platforms. Notable additions include live voicemail and standby feature in iOS 17, and new workout capabilities in watchOS 10. Also, Apple announced updates to enhance user security, including Safari private browsing, communication safety, and the lockdown mode. Lastly, the services segment had a great quarter. It achieved $21.2 billion in revenue with a notable sequential acceleration, resulting in an 8% year-over-year increase that surpassed expectations. This all-time revenue record spanned multiple categories such as video, AppleCare, cloud services, and payment services. Specifically on payment services, customers preferred Apple Pay's convenience in facilitating online, in-app, and in-store purchases. Apple Card has also seen success, emerging as one of the most accomplished credit card programs in the United States. A new high-yield savings account was introduced for cardholders this spring, and its popularity has been remarkable, with customers already depositing more than $10 billion. Meanwhile, Apple TV continues to introduce new hit series like Hijack and Silo. In the span of a few years, Apple TV has accumulated over 1,500 nominations and 370 victories and 54 Emmy Award nominations, spanning 13 titles in the previous month. In terms of sports content, Mr. Cook talked about Major League Soccer. Although focusing on sports is definitely on the right track, it seems like a weaker partnership compared to YouTube streaming live NFL games. Finally, on Apple Music, the company introduced new discovery features centered around live music, including venue guides within Apple Maps and curated lists from prominent artists. What's notably missing from Apple's discussion was any mention of artificial intelligence, which is very different from other tech companies that all spend significant time talking about it. Now, let's examine Apple's financial performance in the second quarter. Apple's total net sales were $81.8 billion, down 1% year-over-year, and can be divided largely into two categories. First, product sales were $60.6 billion, down 4% due to foreign exchange headwinds and macroeconomic challenges. Second, services sales were $21.2 billion, up 8%, with revenue records set in most regions. Apple's revenue was also divided into geographic segments, where Americas reported $35 billion of revenue, down 6% year-over-year. Next, Europe's revenue was $20 billion, up 5%. Greater China was about $16 billion, up 8%. Japan was $4.8 billion, down 11%. And lastly, rest of Asia Pacific generated $5.6 billion, which is down 8%. Next down the line, total segment operating income was $32.1 billion. And if you divide the sources of this profit by regions, America's operating income of $13 billion accounted for 41% of the total EBIT, followed by Europe, Greater China, Japan, and the rest of Asia Pacific. In the company-wide operating expenses, R&D alone accounted for 9%, which was $7.4 billion compared to $6.9 billion a year ago. The total operating income amounted to $23 billion, down very minimally from a year ago. Apple's capital expenditure was $2.1 billion, pretty much the same as a year ago. And at the end of this quarter, Apple was sitting on $57 billion of cash, and the company returned over $24 billion to shareholders through dividends and share repurchases. Now, we will examine the most helpful parts of the investor Q&A. Regarding the geographical trends of iPhone sales, iPhones have displayed robust performance in emerging markets. For example, in China, growth shifted from negative to positive, with similar positive trends being observed in markets like India, Indonesia, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East. However, there was a decline in the US caused by an ongoing decline in the broader smartphone market. Regarding gross margins, which saw an all-time record high of 44.5%, such high margin was driven by cost savings, a services-focused shift, favorable commodities, and a strong product mix. The upcoming September quarter is expected to maintain a similar gross margin of around 45% due to continued favorable factors. The CEO also said that Apple is actively conducting strategic cost control measures in different areas and slowing down hiring considering the uncertain macro environment. However, R&D growth is faster than the rest of the company to maintain focus on innovation and new product development. Cook points to several drivers behind the growth in the services segment. First, the installed base of customers is expanding, creating a larger user pool. Second, customer engagement is rising, indicated by an increase in transactions and paid accounts. Third, the subscription business is flourishing, as shown by the growth of 150 million paid subscriptions in just last year alone, which is nearly double the count from 3 years ago. And finally, content offerings are continuously expanding, enriching the user experience. This trend will continue, and Vision Pro will only help this trend to strengthen. When asked about Apple's approach to AI and machine learning, the CEO claimed AI is the fundamental technology integral to almost all of Apple product offerings already. For example, AI powers Apple's recent and upcoming features in its products, such as personal voice and live voicemail, fall detection, crash detection, and ECG capabilities. Also, Apple will continue its R&D effort in a wide range of AI technologies, including generative AI. Lastly, there are two interesting pieces of news that Apple shareholders should know. First, the recent legal clash between Epic Games and Apple over a direct payment feature in Fortnite has escalated into an antitrust trial commencing on May, potentially reshaping the App Store. And this could have a meaningful impact on Apple's economics as the App Store and the services revenue become a bigger part of Apple's profit. But for now, Apple's App Store rules will remain unchanged as the case proceeds to the Supreme Court. Second, LG, a South Korean Apple supplier, has acquired micro-LED display patent to produce displays for the rumored next-gen Apple Watch Ultra. The patents cover micro-LED technologies like transfer printing, stacking, touch control sensing, AR, VR, and HUD. Micro-LED display can offer high energy efficiency, longer lifespan, better contrast, and faster response times. As Apple expands this proprietary technology to its largest and newest products like iPhones and AR headsets, it will be interesting to see if this becomes another factor that makes Apple products stand out among competing products. Okay, that's it for today's updates on Apple, and see you guys again in the next AI company analysis. Thanks guys.